Hello and welcome back. Today I thought I would talk about limerence and autism. And my credentials are I'm autistic and I've struggled with limerence my entire life. Let's define limerence in case anybody's unfamiliar with the term. It's basically a crush, but how it's different than a crush is the intensity, how long it lasts, how all-consuming it can become, and how much you can create a false relationship in your imagination with this person who probably doesn't like you back, probably doesn't even know you. It's like a platonic crush on steroids. That's basically what limerence is. And I want to talk about how it can relate to autism. And my other credential is that I'm older now. I'm 29 and I've been having like limerent crushes since I was about 13. And I have proof because I have my journals from back then, and I was just reading them the other day, and oh boy, it was intense, the level of limerence that I was struggling with. But it's something that I used to be very ashamed about. Even when it was happening, I didn't know what to call it, but I was ashamed. I would hide it, obviously, in my journals. I would only express my feelings in private with myself because I knew it was not something that everybody was experiencing. I knew it wasn't normal. I just didn't know what it was called, why it was happening, and it kept going until like pretty recently. Like my last limerent crush, I would say, was, like a year ago to about 6 months ago. Like it's something that I've dealt with my whole life, basically. So my first limerent crush was when I was 13 years old, and that's around the time that I started having these like romantic fantasies, but I didn't know they were romantic fantasies because I didn't want to admit that I was gay. I was a lesbian. So I thought of it as an imaginary best friend. And my first limerent crush was an actress. It was Emmy Rossum. That was my first limerent crush. And my family, those who were close to me, would probably know that because I was obsessed with her. I was watching all her movies. I was drawing her face obsessively. Like I have a whole sketchbook, and maybe half of it is Emmy Rossum's face. And I didn't realize I was, having a crush on her. I was just like, oh my gosh. I was just having an imaginary friendship with her in my head that I was hoping would realize in real life. So that's where limerence kind of kicked in for me. I would write to her in my journals as if she's already my best friend. I would like confess my love to her over and over again. I would have dreams with her. I would think about her every day. Like whenever I would have free time, I would try to go online and find little video clips of her. Yeah, the depth of feelings were definitely romantic, although at the time I was definitely denying that. You can see proof of it in my journals. I was like, no, I'm not a lesbian. I can't be. I grew up in a homophobic country, so I thought it was gross to be gay. And at that age, like, you don't want to be like a social outcast. So I was just trying to prove to myself that I'm straight and this is my best friend in my imagination. And another limerent crush I had was for my teacher. And I think this is very common for us. Like, a lot of us have these kind of crushes on our teachers. And when you're autistic, you have that really strong single focus. It's you have this intense focus. You hyperfixate on topics, and sometimes you can hyperfixate on people. And it becomes all-consuming because that's what feels good in that moment. So my second limerent crush was on my teacher, and she was 27 at the time. I think I was 13. And I just thought she was luminous, like the most beautiful person I've ever met. Again, I was denying that it was a lesbian thing, I was just like, I don't know what I thought. Like, I guess, I don't know, I guess I was making any sort of excuse to like deny that I was gay. I realized after that, finally, that I was a lesbian. But yeah, it was very strong. The feelings that I felt inside, my one-sided feelings, were as strong as any relationship feelings that neurotypicals have. Any feelings that my friends were having in their actual relationships. Mine was just one-sided and in my imagination. And I want to connect it to the experience of autism, because with autism, there's a huge social deficit. I almost feel like autism is kind of like being stuck in this shell, in this body, and not being able to show anybody who you are on the inside, not being able to express that in any tangible way. So you become very, very isolated in this shell, and nobody can see you. Nobody can feel you. It's really like being stuck in a glass aquarium where you can see out and they can't see in. So that creates this huge feeling of isolation and loneliness. And the only way to remedy that is to come up with an imaginary relationship where they can see you and they can feel you and they can love that person. And yeah, it's easy to imagine that with somebody that you find attractive. So that's where the crush comes in. You have a crush on a person. But then the limerence takes over, where you imagine that that person can or will see you and love you in the way that you wish so badly, like all of your life, to be seen and to be loved and to be understood. And I think because of the autism, because of the social deficit, because of the lack of being able to communicate and demonstrate who you are in a tangible way, it's almost impossible for that to realize. Like, you see your friends having relationships, having these connections with people and having intense feelings, and it's reciprocated, and it just doesn't seem to happen for us. Or at least that was my experience. And then you start to think, well, why is it happening for them and not for me? And it's a very like innocent questioning, but it always ends up feeling like, okay, so something is wrong with me, and that's why my feelings are never reciprocated. But it's not that something is wrong with me, it's just that I'm dealing with a neurotype with a social and expressive deficit. I don't have the tools to communicate who I am. That's why people can't see you. It's like you become a hidden gem. That's how I want to talk about it. You're like a gemstone within a rock, and everybody just sees a rock. And a rock is not that attractive. It's not, that interesting. But you are the gemstone inside the rock. And it would really take somebody to like take the time to break open that stone to actually reveal you, which is the gemstone inside. But most people won't take the time to get to know you in that way, and that's why it's very hard for us to find relationships where we are actually seen and appreciated and felt for who we are, I think. Because it really does take a special kind of person to take, the initiative, the time to do that, or to even recognize that there might be a gemstone in that rock. And often the outside of the rock, it comes across awkward, it comes across like strange, I think we come across strange to neurotypicals. Like, they can't put their finger on it, but there's something off-putting about us, and they don't go past that. Like, they don't put in any effort to go past that out exterior. Anyway, so I think that the limerence it's like having an imaginary friend as a kid, but it's the grown-up version, an imaginary friend who can see you, understand you, relate to you, connect with you. And when you don't have real friends, the imaginary friend is the only one you have. And I think it was the same for the limerent crushes for me. Just add a romantic layer to it. It's an imaginary friend. in a romantic sense where like they can see you, they can feel you, they can love you the way you can love them, but it's inspired by a real person. And that's where we can get into trouble, because we assign that imaginary girlfriend or boyfriend role to an actual person who exists in real life, who, even if they know you, probably don't know that you feel this way about them. And it might also just be a stranger, like a celebrity or whatever. But because we attach it to a real person, that can become tricky, because then it borders on, you can go into like stalker behavior, you can go into like a creepy place, and that's the issue. Like, they will perceive it as creepy, and you're like, no, but this person is supposed to be the only one who can see me and love me, but they perceive me as creepy. Oh no, like it would be the worst thing, right? So you have to hide it. So then there becomes this layer of shame and secrecy, and you can never really come out to this person about how you feel, because if you do, they're going to perceive you in a bad way. And like, that is the last thing you need, because you only have them in your imagination to perceive you as who you are, like the gem in the inside, right? So you can never come out with your feelings, and it's so difficult. It gives you what you need on some level, on an imaginary level, but also it doesn't give you everything you need, because it's not real. And hopefully, you don't confuse it as being real and go to that person and actually come out with your feelings, because then it's going to be a whole mess. Thankfully, I never did that. But yeah, I had many, many limerent crushes even after that, all the way until now. And it's always giving me something that I need to have in a relationship, like a level of connection that I need to have, that I'm not capable of creating in real life with a real person. But because we also have very creative brains, and very, like, when we focus, we can really focus and hyper focus, and we can really make that imaginary relationship like fleshed out, so it can really become real in a sense for us. So there were times in my life where those sorts of imagined relationships were the only relationships I had, and they were giving me something that I needed in that moment. It's not all bad. There's definitely a role that it plays, I think, for us. The only thing is, it doesn't fulfill like your actual need to be in a connected relationship where you are for real seen and felt and loved for who you are. And that need never goes away. No matter how many limerent relationships we have, that need for an actual relationship never goes away. So that's the only part that's like, well, shit, The need's never going to go away. So unless we have an actual real relationship that fulfills that need, we're going to keep having those limerent imagined relationships with people who might not even know us, who might not even know we exist, which doesn't help, because then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of never being seen, of never being loved. And it really feeds into that belief of like, something's wrong with me, I am not lovable. And here's another proof. But yeah, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. It's not true. Just because this person you imagined would love you doesn't feel that way about you, doesn't mean you're not lovable. You are still that gem. You just have to find somebody who's willing to break through the rock, the exterior rock, to reveal that gem of who you are on the inside. And just from my experience, it helps if they are also neurodivergent. I think it's very difficult for neurodivergent people to be with neurotypicals in an intimate relationship. I'm not saying it's impossible, I just think it's very far-fetched. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I just want to add, if you are struggling with limerence, just go easy on yourself. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And especially if you're autistic, I think it's kind of just the way our brains work. I think it's very similar to when we hyperfixate on a topic that we really love. We go all in. And I think it's what we do with people as well. When we find somebody that we're really attracted to, that we really like, we hyperfixate, and then it becomes limerence. think there's a connection there. I haven't read any like studies on this, but I think they should definitely study the link between autism and limerence, because from my experience and from the experience of people that I've heard from on the internet, it seems to be a theme. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, and let me know in the comments if you are autistic and you struggle with limerence, and do you agree with what I said? What was your experience like? I would love to know. Bye.